I'm Pauline. And after doing extensive research on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch for my last speech, I became deeply interested and invested in how we can help clean up and prevent this from getting worse in the future. And guess what? It's not that hard, and we all can do it. But before I start, I have a question for you. Would you rather live here or here? Well, if we don't start, taking the time to reduce, reuse, and recycle, we won't have a choice, and we're all going to end up living in places like the first pictures. So we've all heard these words before, and we probably know what they mean, but how many of you actually practice all three on a daily or even a weekly basis? I imagine that some of you do some of them some of the time, but sadly, some of the time isn't enough. We need to do more, and we need to start now. My goal is to persuade you to do your part to reduce, reuse, and recycle on a much more regular basis. We want a happy earth, not a messy one. To begin with, I'll talk to you about why we need to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Next, I'd like to share solutions for doing our part. And finally, I'd like to challenge you to take action to make a change in your own life. So, living in Oregon, we've likely all had a chance to visit the beautiful ocean beaches and wander through the green, lush foothills of Mount Hood. But imagine, if you will, that the next time you go to that beach, you stumble over pieces of trash every few feet. Or instead of looking at those gorgeous wildflowers on Dog Mountain, you're instead seeing empty soda bottles and plastic bags stuck to the dry plants. It might be hard to imagine, but believe it or not, we're not that far away. Did you know that according to greenmatters.com, Americans generate more than 267 million tons of solid waste every year? In 2017, only 94.2 million tons of that waste was either recycled or composted. And that's only about 35% of the total amount. And when you take into account that only 8% of discarded plastics are actually recycled every year, that things start to look a little more unsettling. According to the EPA.gov, the total generation of municipal solid waste, or MSW, in 2018 was 292.4 million tons, which was approximately 23.7 million tons more than the amount generated in 2017. In case you're not entirely convinced, we have a problem. Here's some more fun facts from sosfuture.org. Over 24 trillion styrofoam cups are thrown away each year. Stop using styrofoam, please. The amount of wood and paper we throw away is enough to heat 50 million homes for 20 years. 20 years. On average, each one of us produces 4.4 pounds of solid waste each day. And in the U.S., this one boggles my mind, we use 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour. Every hour. So, as you can imagine, this problem impacts us all because we all want to continue to enjoy this planet. And in the case of many, we'd like to know that our children and their children can continue to enjoy life on this planet. Many of us love the clean, fresh mountain air and the incredible views. But if we don't slow down the use of fossil fuels, those hikes will someday be filled with smog and obstructed views. Many of us also love the beaches of Oregon. We might even enjoy scuba diving or sailing. But if we don't stop the amount of trash that's going into our rivers and oceans, the water and the beach will be littered with trash, and the sea life will slowly die away. It's all starting to sound a little grim, right? Well, now that I've hopefully convinced you that we have a problem, let's consider the solutions of how to fix it. The EPA.gov sums up the solution almost perfectly. They say, the most effective way to reduce waste is to not create it in the first place. Kind of a no-brainer. Making a new product emits greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change and requires a lot of materials and energy. Raw materials must be extracted from the earth, and the product must be fabricated, then transported to wherever it will be sold. As a result, reduction and reuse are the most effective ways you can save natural resources, protect the environment, and save money. So really, by following 3 simple steps, reduce, reuse, and recycle, we can fix and change this for the future. So here's how we do it. First, thinking about reducing. Things like composting. Instead of throwing away our food, let's compost it. Use cloth napkins. Stop using paper towels and paper napkins. Most of us probably have done this, but if you haven't, set up paperless e-statements. Here's a big one. Replace your plastic toothbrush with bamboo toothbrushes. Those plastic ones just sit in the landfills and break down into microplastics. And another huge one, again, we are Portlanders, so most of us have done this, but if you haven't, please stop using plastic bottles. Get yourself a reusable water bottle and a reusable coffee mug. Ways to reuse things. Join a local Buy Nothing group on Facebook. If you haven't heard of this, and yes, I know Facebook's a little bit maybe the old people social platform, but Buy Nothing is an amazing small community of people that live right next door, right down the street from you. And it's a gifting and giving situation. So if someone has a dining room set to get rid of, instead of just tossing it, they put it on the Buy Nothing page. And if you happen to be looking for a dining room set, you can get that for free. It doesn't go into the waste. It doesn't get tossed. It goes to your home and continues to live life. Reusable shopping bags. Again, Oregonians, we know this, but I'm even guilty of it. I forget my bags and I end up having to use the plastic ones or the paper ones from the store. Please invest in some good reusable bags or just use the ones the store has given you. Wool dryer balls. Get rid of the dryer sheets. Use those dryer balls. They work amazing. Ditch the Ziploc. This one was hard for me, but it's actually kind of easy once you take the step to do it. Reusable storage containers can be purchased, again, even reused from your Buy Nothing from many different places, but they are so much more efficient and better at not producing more waste. Shop local consignment stores and thrift stores. Before you look at buying something new, check in there. They likely have what you need. And one of my favorites, when you are ready for your favorite adult hoppy beverage, please use a growler. Don't buy a new 6-pack. Take your growler down to the local spot and get it filled up. Recycling. Unfortunately, this one isn't as easy as it used to be. According to greenmatters.com, the global pandemic and several other factors have seen things taking a turn for the worse in the regard of recycling. Much of the plastic recycling in the U.S. was previously outsourced to China, but The Atlantic reports that China no longer accepts most of our recycling. In fact, according to Yale 360, changing regulations in recent years have stalled the process so much that it's almost ground to a halt. So, we can still recycle. It's just harder. Things like glass, paper, much easier. The plastics, that's where it's at. As I mentioned before, only about 8% of our plastics are recycled, meaning that 92% sit in landfills, breaking down into those nasty microplastics that I spoke about in my previous speech. This is why reducing and reusing are maybe even more critical than recycling these days. So you might be thinking, I'm just one person. It doesn't matter because I don't make that much difference. Well, think about this. Between 4 and 12 million metric tons of plastic enter the ocean every year. That's enough to cover every foot of coastline on the planet. And that amount is projected to triple in the next 20 years. Let's that sink in for a moment. This is according to oceansociety.org. But if we start doing our part now to reduce, reuse, and recycle, then if we were to fully recycle the 20 million tons of household recyclables that are thrown in the trash, we would reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 96 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That's according to recyclingpartnership.org. They also say that for every ton of glass recycled, we can conserve 1,300 pounds of sand, 410 pounds of soda ash, 380 pounds of limestone, and 160 pounds of feldspar. And finally, according to sosfuture.org, if all of our newspaper was recycled, we could save 250 million trees a year. So we know we have a problem. We know how to solve it. We know what will happen if we don't solve it, and we know what will happen if we do. So now it's time for a challenge. I challenge each of you to pick 2 things that you will do differently for the next 30 days. If you're successful, try it again for another month. If you're not, ask yourself why you weren't successful, make some adjustments, and try it again. Here's just some reminders of things I touched on, of things that we can do to make changes. Those reusable water bottles, composting, join a Buy Nothing group on Facebook, replace that plastic toothbrush with a bamboo one, get those paperless statements set up, replace your dryer sheets with wool dryer balls, replace your Ziplocs with reusable food storage containers and bags, growlers for adult hoppy beverages, shop consignment or thrift stores before buying new, and if you do need to buy new, which some things we just do, take a few minutes if you can and research the company you're buying from. See if they're using sustainable practices. Companies all over the world are really investing in this as well. So if we can support them, it's going up higher up the chain, and that's helping overall. And finally, a great website is wastelesswednesday.org. They have weekly ideas and tips of how to recycle, reduce, and reuse. So to recap, we need to reduce, recycle, and reuse more often. We can solve this problem by identifying and implementing change. If we don't make a change, guys, we saw what will happen. And honestly, we already see what's happening. If we do make the change, we saw how things can improve. So please, I challenge you, pick 2 things that you can do differently for the next 30 days. Yes, we do have a big problem with trash and pollution in our environment, but we have the power to change it. At the end of the day, we all make our own choices. But I ask yourself, what side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side that sits back and thinks, most everyone else does it, it'll be fine, I don't need to? Or do you want to be on the side of history that says, I am only one person, but I can make big changes, and I'm ready to start today? And if nothing else, please do it for the cute turtles. Thank you for your time.